Mountains Garage on a gray Tuesday afternoon, second week of April 2023. High 50 degrees, the sun's kind of breaking through every now and then. I took the old 55 hardtop for a ride to go get some groceries. Not a bad day, if you don't count the few mistakes I've made lately. The last video I was complaining about my stop on my bead roller. I made some mistakes building that, no big deal. Just continue on and be happy with the results. Last night, I gave myself a deadline, never a good idea. Late in the day, the UPS truck brought the second Eastwood large bead roller table, and I had 1 hour and I thought I could stick it on there. You watched as I installed it on the gray bead roller a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and I had measured for the first hole, drilled both sides, marked and measured and marked both sides, drilled through, and it's like a gun sight, I could see right through it. It was flawless. Last night, I guess, confident that I wouldn't make a mistake, I did. And then third, I might as well talk about this transmission I'm sitting next to. This morning, I thought to myself, since the YouTube channel from Texas stopped putting out videos of stripping transmissions, there must be a giant void in the world. And I guess people want to see somebody strip transmissions, so I set up the camera. I mean, he had 200,000 followers before they went silent. So maybe I could grab a few of those. It was just a crazy idea. People love transmission content. I set up the camera, did the intro, I watched that, that was fine. And then I turned the camera on. I have the volume low so I don't get that modulation in my voice. I thought I heard it beep. I spent about 10 minutes wailing this thing apart, and I didn't get any footage. So that's three things. They say bad things happen in threes. Nothing really bad has happened, but that's where we're at today. So let's go back to last night. Let me turn you around. Behold the underside of the Eastwood 23021 bead roller table. If you shop around, I bought one on Amazon with free shipping, $118, and one on eBay for $119, free shipping, both directly from Eastwood. But if you go to Eastwood's website, that's the price, $118 or $19, depending on the day, but you have to pay shipping. And there's a little coupon that pops up offering you $10 back, but I like the concept of free shipping while it lasts. I don't believe, I've mentioned this before, I could build this, and I believe it's powder coated, but it's all square tubing. I have to buy a big piece of 18 gauge. The mounting surface is adjustable. It comes with a pin and a bolt, we'll get to that. There's no way I could duplicate that for the money when you factor in any amount of labor. So I was happy buying it. As you know, I'm hard on myself when I buy something I could make, but I don't happen to have a piece of steel 18 gauge quite this big. I could piece a few together and do lots of welding and grinding, and I'm sure it would be fantastic with no mistakes, wrong. But anyway, the second one showed up, and when I installed the first one, I didn't learn a thing. I learned some things, but how I did it was, this would be the rearward hole because we're upside down. I determined how much gap I wanted ahead of my dies. I wanted to be able to remove the dies without moving the table. It's nice that the table moves, but most of the time you just want to spin the nut off. And this, I determined 3 inches was what I needed. It only sticks it out further. It worked out really good. So I put a C-clamp around here, hung it from my chain fall, drove the bead roller underneath, marked the rear hole, and like I mentioned, I nailed it right straight through. These are 10 millimeter. Then I had to make a bracket for the front. The rear has 2 spacers. They give you material, you have to cut it yourself. So this is the width of my bead roller, a spacer on either side. It's no big deal to line up the spacers, but they don't give you 2 pins. They give you 1 pin, and they give you a full threaded M10 1.5 bolt, a flat washer, and a regular nut. Now as a pivot, you're either going to continue to spin the nut off, or you have to go find yourself a lock nut. And you have to deal with a nut. I really wanted 2 pins and wish they'd just given me that, or at least the proper hardware, but hey, for the most part, they did a pretty good job. I ended up temporarily, until last night's mistake happened, I had it double nutted back here, and that was my pivot, and then the front pin you can pull in and out. You can either flip it up or flip it down. But I thought it'd be really cool if I had 2 pins to just pull it off when I wanted to, just like I just did to shoot this video. But I had not looked for any 10 millimeter rod, not exactly hardware store stuff, so I could make something. Fast forward to last night. Oh, wait a minute. The table comes with instructions on how to put it on their bead rollers. It doesn't mention it's universal, it just says bead roller table. Hey, everything's universal if you have a drill, a torch, a welder, etc. The amazing part of this rig is they give you these really high quality drill guides. There's a hole there and a hole there. So here's your gap between the pins. And this is from their plate style bead rollers. You line that up with the bolt that holds the lower shaft on, and they give you a drill guide. These are actually really high quality. They have a braked portion of it. I'll have to find a use for them. I haven't checked if they're magnetic or not. They kind of look like stainless, but I haven't checked it. So, well, in interest of fair reporting, it's magnetic. So no doubt regular steel. I'll chase that ATF around for the end of the day if I don't wipe it off. So this was the secret that would have prevented last night's fiasco. But again, when I did the first one, I marked out the rear hole, and then continuing to hold it with the C-clamp centered, I made a bracket for the front, and that worked just fine. Last night, I arranged it on the new box tubing style bead roller. I learned that my stop I had built on Sunday and I complained about, I had to cut the bottom off it so it would clear the table when the table's in position. I'll show you when we're done. And just like the first one, I marked, measured the other side, the same as a mark on one side, and drilled 2 holes. And I missed by 1/4 inch. I read the tape measure wrong. I started with a small hole, unfortunately, but now, again, I gave myself this deadline that didn't have to exist, just so I could motivate myself to get it done in the short amount of time I had, because I really wanted to be done with the whole project. So now I got a hole, so I measure again. And at this point, clearly, I lost the inability to read a tape measure, because now I only missed by like a 1/16, but it's still wrong. The holes don't line up. So, temporarily, you know how that goes. My deadline was near. I ended up hogging the holes out so at least the bead roller table would fit on the roller square. And then in disgust, I just walked away. And the deadline, the plans that I had didn't happen, so turns out half an hour later, I'm right back out in the garage, and by then, I had thought of a plan. These are already 10 millimeter, which is almost 400 thousandths. I have some 1/2 inch rod, so I was able to make new pins, and my thought process was now I'll have 2 10 millimeter pins for the first one, and the second table will be attached with 1/2 inch pins. So I made 2 1/2 inch pins, and managed to straighten the rear out, so I don't want it to look terrible when you take it off. There's one extra hole I drilled that's just gonna be there. I'll paint it. It'll be a feature someday. The front bracket came out just fine. But as I now think about it and stare at these drill guides, and my advice to you, if you're still watching, do your front first. Measure your gap and make your front bracket, because you're going to have to make something, unless you're putting on one of Eastwood's bead rollers, you have to make the front bracket. And then, once you have that mounted, the table's where you want it, use the drill guide to position the next one. I didn't do that. I didn't use this at all. And the answer to most of my problems lied right here, because once you make the front bracket and you're holding the table straight and you're happy with the height, and the height is adjustable. It's one good thing I like about these. Somebody thought enough to put these adjustable brackets on there, so I put them as high as possible. I line the table up with the middle of the bead roller, and then I'm never going to go higher than that. And because I'm maxed out on height, I can do nothing but lower it almost a ½ inch. So I've been happy where I place them, but my thought process was stretch them all the way out and mount it that way, because they come centered. And I guess if you really trusted what you were doing, you could do the same thing, but my version of it, I put it as high as possible, even with the throat of the bead roller. And if I need to lower it, I can. I don't believe I'll ever raise it. So let me go put this back on with 2 pins now, because I just took it off, took the bolt out, and decided to talk about it. And I'll show you the other bead roller that I made it. It's attached, it works, and we'll end on a happy note. So the table's sturdy, but it's not too bad. But taking my own advice, this is the bracket I made for the front of this particular bead roller. I put the front in first, and then mess with the spacers after the weight of holding the bead roller is already gone. I'll just line her up. Stick the pin in like that, and now it'll dangle anywhere it wants to. And you can simply bring it back. It doesn't hit or anything. Put one spacer in. Second spacer. And just like that, we're installed. I love how these wheels roll. So now both of my bead roller tables are on pins. Let me show you the one that I butchered and then fixed. Underneath the box tubing style bead roller, you can see I used the bolt that holds my lower shaft block in. And the pins are 1/2 inch rod, and I had a piece of round tubing that fit over them. And it makes a good little handle. I could knurl it, I suppose, but this is where my mistake started. That's how much I missed by. But other than that, you can't tell, and when you take it off, it doesn't look horrible. So it works out really nice. I suppose I should do a bead roller die video, potentially. I have been messing around with some scrap metal, and I determined I needed an Arty type die, a really thin die. It's kind of tapered. It looks like a UFO. In the previous sets I had bought, there was a tipping die that was close, but it's about 1/8 inch wide, and I thought I might narrow it up on the lathe, and the sparks just fly off my carbide. It is hardened. Should not be a wear problem. So last weekend I was looking, and the only die set that's available, because the 22mm dies, they got them in sets, and there's only 3 or 4 available. And if you shop around, you can pay a lot less than, for instance, Eastwood charges for the same thing. I bought the hem die set. 3 sets, because there's 3 steps in making a hem. A hem is like if you wanted to build a trunk lid or a door panel and you wanted to fold the bottom over. There's 3 steps to make it go back on itself, so it's double layer, 1/2 inch wide, whatever you want to do. When I was buying or shopping for 3/4 ID dies for my previous bead roller, the hem roll set, which is 6 dies, was $750. So I never bought it. I'm too cheap, I guess. I didn't think I'd do that many of them. Shopping last weekend in 22mm ID dies, I bought the 3-piece set. shipped for $69. So then I got adding up. Oh, anyway, but I was not expecting it to be the shape they are because it was hard to tell from the picture, but all three of the hem-roll dies make perfect art dies. I've only played with this a little bit more with the skateboard wheel underneath, but it's perfect for making like the little X's or pillows for like door panels and stuff, or maybe even doing some artsy crafty stuff. This is what you need. If you're doing aluminum, they make them in Delaware and plastic too, but for now, for this, it was a pleasant surprise that I essentially got 3 dies that I can use for that purpose. That's awesome. So then I got adding up how much I had in dies. I bought 4 sets because I had to buy a set to get rid of on the Woodward Fab Super Bead. So when I sold that, I didn't want to sell a lot of dies, so I included that in my price because I do have a set of those plus the 3 other sets that I bought. I bought a set of round over dies that you can round over the edge of a panel in different diameters. I bought your fabrication series, they call it, or the whatever. The ones Eastwood sells like $400. I paid $80 for that. So long story short, I paid 1 set of dies that I bought for putting a ring and tubing. I paid $52 just for that 1 die set, which is still a good deal, but compared to what I paid for the rest of them. So I included that, which kind of skewed my price per die up. But calculating it out today, I got 40 dies, 20 sets, and at $9.25 a die or $18.50 a set. That's pretty good. $18.50 for a set of dies, average. I've averaged them out, and again, that includes buying 1 expensive set. So if you shop around, they're all over the internet. Basically, Amazon and eBay is where I bought them. And you'll see the same set of dies, and the price will range $150, $200 for the same set or more. Like everything else on the internet, it's buyer beware. So that's it for today. Nothing's gone as planned, but that's okay. Tomorrow's another day. I did get that transmission stripped, and I'll work on it some more tonight and tomorrow. I'm sorry you missed out on that, but that was my intent. But the beauty of it is there'll be more. They keep coming. So have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon.